Well, welcome and happy Wednesday to you. I'm Dr. Stephanie Ardrey, known as Dr. Money, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Naked with Dr. Money. As usual, we have our weekly conversation about mindset, motivations, and manifestations. Mindset has continued to be a focus that people are considering and discussing because, when we talk about overall wellness, well being, it's becoming a better understood correlation that your total well being really begins with your mind, how it is you react to the daily challenges of just living your life. And so it's important to realize that you too can control your mind, your mindset, and how it is you interpret your daily journey. You've heard people talk about, is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? Well, certainly that's about a perspective, right? It's dependent upon how you choose to look at the glass. The same amount of fluid in the glass, but do you see it as half empty or half full? Well, that's your mindset. And your mindset oftentimes is formed based upon your beliefs. Sometimes you're socialized. Sometimes it's part of your nature. Sometimes it's a combination of how you've been nurtured and your nature, and then the experiences that you've encountered along the way. As usual, this conversation is great to have with others. And so hopefully you'll enjoy the conversation that I'm going to have today with my guest, Michael Hudson. Michael Hudson is the CEO of CMT Integration. And what CMT does is provide solutions to assist you on the technology side with your software solutions for your business operations. What I'd like to say is, Mike and I go back over many decades, and initially we were introduced and became collaborators on various business situations, part of a youth entrepreneurial program in Oakland. We grew from there to learn that we were family, so cousins, and we've continued over the years to collaborate on business interests that we share, interest in not only technology, but most recently, interest around health and wellness, and definitely shared interest around generating generational wealth for our families. But Mike is a disabled veteran. He served the country in the military. And so some of what we're up to of late allows us to bring all of these different factors into what we're doing going forward. But don't forget, because what I usually do, what I will do in this conversation as well, is we'll talk about mindset. I'm going to ask him, is his mindset the result of nature, nurture, or a little bit of both? And then how his mindset has contributed to his motivations, and more importantly, how that has fostered his manifestations. So, without any further ado, let me bring Mike into this conversation. Hey, Mike,
Uh, Good afternoon, Stephanie.
how are you?
I'm doing great. How are
Good,
you?
good. Looks like you're out and about.
Oh, yes.
So, multitasking, I guess multitasking is one of those things that has to happen.
Yes, it does. Every day.
Wonderful. Well, as I was sharing, this conversation is about mindset. And so, as with all the guests, I want you to think about for a second. One, my first question is, when is it that you first realized that you had a particular mindset? And kind of the part B of that question is, do you believe that your mindset is a result of your nature, how you were nurtured, or a little bit of both?
Okay. I discovered my mindset when I was about 3 or 4. And I, part B of that is it was both nurtured uh, and natured. My, on the nurtured side, my father was one that had a saying. He said, anything you want to learn, know, or do, um, do it. He said the only limitation you have is what you place on yourself. Then he backed it up by saying, "Don't tell me you can't. You mean I want to, but don't tell me you can't." He said, "You don't have to be the best. You just have to try your best. And you try your best, you're better than 100% of the people who don't try. And if you really try your best, you're probably better than 80% of the people who do." And since I wanted to learn everything, that's what I did.
That's so interesting. Now, Mike, we've learned, we didn't know it when we first met that we're family, but you also have a unique, I'd say, comparison, being me being an only child. You have siblings. So, where do you fall within the rank of your siblings? Where are you in the tribe?
I'm in hell position. It's 13 of us, and it's two boys. It's a total of 9 girls and 4 boys, and starts out 2 boys, 6 girls, me, 3 more girls, then a boy. So
Wow.
I caught hell by my sisters in both directions.
And that's interesting. And would you say that those siblings also contributed? I know through the stories that we've shared that your parents definitely were really instrumental and they had very clear intentions, not only for themselves, but for you all.
Yes,
These days, we don't see as many larger families, or many families have kind of shrunk in size, as the generations have gone forward. But being in a family where you've had siblings and they each had personalities and influence, and they all were getting probably the similar messages, but then interpreting and executing or acting on those, the guidance, those directions a little bit differently. How did that also contribute to your experience in both your nature and how you were being nurtured?
well, in for my family, I give my mother and father, but a lot of my mother, her thing was there was no such thing as this is for girls and this is for boys. As far as doing things, working around the house, different jobs or whatever we did, everybody learned how to do everything. My mother taught all 13 of her kids how to cook, clean, sew, wash, iron, darn socks. My mother used to crochet doilies, and I never forget when I first started learning how to iron them. And when I got to where I was good enough to iron the big doily on the dining room table and make it stand up, okay, and you just got to where anything you want to do, you knew you can do it. You just had to try it and go for it. And some of my brothers and sisters, they all did what they wanted to do, but for me, I've always had that drive because I wanted to learn everything, and I still hold that to this day. I want to learn everything.
So curiosity is key. And, we talked about, then having that foundation. How you think that particular foundation contributed to what it is you've been motivated to do? Because you've kept a thirst for learning and growing, a curiosity, but also how has that been part of your journey, if you'd say from, the early days to now?
Well, I started out when I was real little. I always had a love for cars. And that's how I started at 3. And I told my father I wanted to build cars, and he asked me, "How you gonna do that?" Then he started teaching me the things, and so I learned how to build cars. I learned how to design cars. Um, and my father would always challenge me, but also give me the support. Um, and even in school, for all of us, it was a situation where, with your homework and math or science, he would say, "All right, let me see your homework." And if you got something wrong, he'd say, "You got this one wrong. Go back and redo it." If you got it wrong again, he'd make you sit down and then have you go through it step by step to figure out where you did something wrong. And he'd ask you, "Okay, is that right?" On every step. Well, back then you don't really think about it, but later on in life, I came to understand that is how you learn to do everything in being able to go back and trace your steps and analyze whatever it is you're doing, but not just in math, but in everything you do in life. Where you made a mistake, what's going right, what's not, what do you need to do to correct that? That's it, all came in from there.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. I've been reading this book called Hidden Treasures, and it's really, you know, kind of discussing some of that, you know, what drives certain people to really focus on accomplishing many of the things that they end up accomplishing. But again, it starts again with the mindset because it shares, you know, certain person's journeys, and within there, one of the featured subject matters is Melody Hobson, and talks about, you know, she talks about growing up in a reasonably large family as well, you know, with a single mother, and how it was challenging for them just to, you know, keep things going, and how that fostered her interest and desire to find ways so that she could use things that would benefit her, such as education and other things that she could control. And so she found herself being both very curious, and number two, really finding what she could excel at. So she excelled academically. And by doing so, that opened up additional educational opportunities that then allowed her to change, you know, what it was she manifested. And of course, we know she's a co-CEO of Ariel Capital. Of course, she's married to Lucas. Stephen Lucas. And so, you know, this all of those types of outcomes, you know, those manifestations are the result of saying it doesn't matter what's happening today. It's about what is it that I would like to see happen tomorrow, and being motivated. Because again, the same information that's available for you is available for everyone else. But what prompts one to pursue, you know, or to develop their curiosity? And what would you say, besides having that encouragement from your parents in terms of the mindset in the beginning, how have you remained motivated along, you know, the course of your experiences? Because it's not like you only have had one career, you know, so you've had certain interests that you've explored. So how have you been motivated to explore these other paths and other areas of interest?
Well, a big part of it was constantly educating myself, going out and finding out what's out there. And I ran across some things in the early 80s that kind of gave me another kick start into the mindset um, with uh, Motivation Institutes, Paul J. Meyer, Success Motivation Institute, which basically gave me the mantra: if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so
Which
it
is
says, you have as you thinketh, there goes the man or woman.
It's really true, but you know, a lot of times people don't realize the power of their thoughts. You know, I use the analogy of, you know, some people go through life and they think the glass is half empty, while other people see the same glass and they see it as half full with opportunity. And it's just a matter of, you know, what is the perspective. And I did a course, a year-long study of Landmark, and in that experience, Landmark really helped. Distinguish between, you know, what's happening versus your interpretation of what's happening. And so they coined a phrase, you know, that we're meaning making individuals. So things happen, but what happens is we make it mean something, and it doesn't mean that it means what we made it mean, but it's all about our lens. Which is why, you know, you could say five people standing seeing a car accident, everybody has a different interpretation of what caused or what happened or how that accident. You go, wait a second, you all, you know, but everyone has a different set of filters that they're taking and processing that information through. And depending upon that, which is why we think we hear so many things are misconstrued. Sometimes I listen to somebody and I say, you say one thing, and by the time it gets back around a circle, that thing has been changed,
Yes.
expanded. It's not the
Well,
original statement anymore. It's been
exactly.
reinterpreted and reimagined along its journey.
And that's
So
the
yes,
thing where, yeah, I've always said, and from that standpoint, there's a minimum of 360 ways to look at anything. And that's on a single plane. And if you take it into a sphere, it's almost infinite ways to look at anything.
absolutely, absolutely. And so some of those end up being from that original mindset, which is a combination of those beliefs, how you've been socialized, the experiences that you've had. But also, there was another article that I was reading recently that was talking about the millennials and these Gen Zs, and the idea that so much of their life experiences have been sort of instant experiences. And so, because of those instant outcomes, technology, microwaves, things that happen so quickly, and then also because of parents providing them with so many things, that what seems to be a gap is the ability to go back and understand. They don't understand the step by steps and how to get from point A to point B, which something you touched on was so valuable, is that your father and mother made sure, in particular, that whatever it was you were learning along the way, that if it was you were struggling with something, that he could help you go back and learn. Let's break it down step by step. I don't know if
Exactly.
you're having that experience. I know you're a father and a grandfather. And so, kind of looking through, how you're nurturing that next generation. And, just even looking at the generation between your kids and your grandkids, what are you experiencing and seeing in terms of not only the mindset that you've put forth, but also their adapt adapting, accepting, and incorporating of that particular mindset, but more importantly, their motivations.
Well, as you know, you've met my two of my grandkids, the two little ones, and the little one that we call Seymour J. Krellborn. He asks 76 million questions a second, and he wants to know everything. And it is manifesting itself now to, because he, like I was, love cars. He now can look at little Hot Wheels and tell you, okay, this is a Lamborghini, this is a Charger, this is a Challenger, this is a, and he's 5, so he's going through, and and then he says, well, this is a race car, but this car is not a race car, but you can make it one. So, and he is not only now starting to just look at, but analyze what it is, but what's its potential of what it can do based upon his imagination.
Which is
And
really important because, again, when we think about, activating those ideals, a lot of times, sometimes we think we're rushing, we're in a hustle and bustle of life. And so having a young, curious mind, it can be time consuming. But, I found along my journey, because, my son was really inquisitive as well. I encouraged that. I loved the idea, and I made sure that instead of just giving him any old answer, that when he asked a question, that I took the time to really help him explore how we come to the answer, so that he would be empowered to be able to activate his curiosity, but more importantly, know that there are tools available if it is that you're, looking for some information. Well, here, let's go, get the information there. One time he was doing a homework assignment, and again, the computer was down or the internet was down that he was trying to get to, and he's like, well, I won't be able to finish the assignment. And I said, oh yes, you will. Go to the library and pick off these three books and let me show you where that same information is. And I think that that's something that sometimes kids forget. The libraries are filled with a wealth of information and resources and tools. Just about anything you want to know is between there or between GTS. Google that stuff. But
Right.
there's ways to get it. And of course, now with AI helping you out, you can, advance those learning opportunities by being able to run scenarios and everything else. But it begins with, is that being encouraged? Is that curiosity being encouraged and fostered?
Yes, and that's a great um, thing. I know with my kids and grandkids still. Um, I'm constantly giving them and feeding them information to help them move forward in their life because I consume so much information. And I'm always out there researching, looking for things, what's coming. In tech, I'm always looking at the emerging technology, like in dealing with AI. I watched that come along in the last 15 years. Um, like in the medicine, the telemedicine and wellness, I started looking at that, and what is now being really starting to take off is the light wave therapies um, in all genres of medicine. And I recall seeing that 2015 at CES Digital Health. The things that you want to know, you got to look at it and try to be ahead of the curve. And so I expose that to my kids and like my grandkids, teaching them things about not just life, but responsibilities. Um, we're in this thing now with money. Everything from this is a penny, 5 pennies make a nickel, 2 nickels make a dime, all the way up to $1. And I have them all understanding all that. And then showing them the bills all the way up to a $500 bill. And, but not just once. It's something you do repeatedly to show them that it's just not a one off. Plus, I did what my parents did for me. Um, like this weekend, you have the air show. My kids, they love the kids and the grandkids love going to the air shows um, and showing them and taking it to things uh, to show what's out there. Um, my grandson, along with being racing, he wants to fly a plane. My other grandson, he wants to drive a train, and he could pick out a train. I don't know how he finds the track, but he could sit up and pick out a track just driving down the highway, and he'll say railroad track, and everybody's looking. I'm looking for it, and finally he'll point it out, and we looking at with older eyes, and it's like, oh, it takes us a while to focus in on something that far away, but it because of all the exposure, it gave them a baseline of things that they like and want to learn about. All my kids had the same thing. They had things that because they was exposed to so many things, what they enjoyed, um, and because of that, it let them know that there was no limitations of what you can do. And or there was another thing that I told them what my father told me. He said when he said there's no limitation to what except for what you place on yourself. He said, but don't be the jack of all trades and master of none. He said, whatever you do, you go master it. Once you master it, you can move on and master something else. And that's it, because let's face it, just like you, I have been through several careers. And my thing is anything I went into, I want to master it. And I want to do the best I could. And even though it may not be something I want to do for the rest of my life, but it allowed me to keep my life moving forward until I went to the next thing.
that's so important because part of this book that was talking about hidden treasures is really talking about how we train ourselves to learn new things. And more importantly, why that is so critical for full life, right? You need to keep your brain active. And a lot of times people think it's about, we can become creatures of habit, and that being, kind of having this routine that you continue to follow. But sadly, that does not keep your brain active. The more you take on new challenges. And so, a couple of examples that were cited about these folks that decided to learn new language. And so, every time they learn a new language, typically by immersion, so traveling to a country and just spending time really being fully immersed in that country, and instead of having a mental limitation that they need to speak the language perfectly, being willing to jump in to those conversations, and how that actually, because of no fear, the confidence that's built, and then being able to go and go, okay, now let me go take on the next language. I think it's kind of that same idea, being willing to find or to further your passions, even though they may go into what can appear to others as divergent paths.
Right. And that's the thing. It may not be a diversion path, but it's just a continuing path. And I look at it like this: how many, what are the total number of spectrums of light? Okay, spectrums of color. And you start there with, if you don't think there's a limit to that, then why should you have the limit?
Mindset, right? Powerful
Exactly.
mindset. Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Beginning, I always say, definitely looking at all of the things that have been imagined, that we didn't think, or we didn't know, we didn't see, but somebody else had an idea, somebody had a vision. I know, myself, sometimes that is both an opportunity and can sometimes be a frustration. Seeing ahead, a decade plus in advance, and trying to share, with others what it is you see, before that seeing has been shared or become a little bit more adopted, where many more people begin to see that same thing. It
Right.
can be challenging being out there, as a bit of a maverick, out there ahead of the crowd, right,
Oh
exploring.
yes. It is definitely, it can be a definitely lonely place out there for a while. And then all of a sudden people I I go back to tech. I know I my kids always we laugh about it now. Back in 1998, I brought home a little medallion that had a 1 inch by 1 inch TV screen that you could play MP4 and MP3 audio and video on it. And that's when that was just coming out. They didn't think it was cool because no one else had it. Now, later on, when everything started being, you know, music started being downloaded off the internet and everything, then they were like, oh, uh, where's that little medallion? Yeah, oh, now you want it. I said, it's still there. You just have to learn how to use the technology. Is like I said, you had a chance to learn before. Don't wait for your friends to tell you it's cool. You got to decide what is in that you want to know and how to move forward with it. You set the standard.
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking of which, I want to pivot to a little bit of our conversation around not only wellness, but also, thank you again for your service, to the country, and, your lens of what you're seeing around, veterans and opportunities for veterans as relates to their wellness. It's not only just veterans. I've heard people talk about the impacts of COVID-19 and how many people in general who never served have been suffering from the mental trauma, the emotional trauma that left, and experiencing signs of PTSD, without having served in the military. But that's just how emotionally traumatic the experience of being on lockdown and all of these different things that we all encountered. And so, as much as we're supposedly kind of back to business as usual, it doesn't change the fact that if you've had an emotional experience, that it's still there, potentially lying dormant. So, what are you seeing as well? You know, we talked about a little bit telemedicine, so technology, wellness, just even awareness, and a variety of potential modalities. You're talking about light therapy. So, kind of, you know, what is it that you're seeing? What is it that you're experiencing? And what do you think is coming in the future?
Well, right now, a lot of things are there, but the implementation of it is very slow in both telemedicine and the different available treatments like light wave therapy. It's just now moving, but it's more into people who have sought out wellness treatment and lifestyle changes. As you know, uh, you and Doc, I went through that changed. You know, I've had 9 heart attacks. So after that, I mean, there was a time less than a year ago that I I was on a thing saying don't lift anything over 10 pounds, and I have totally changed because of the lifestyle. And over time, I've lost, come down from 280 now to 219.
Wow.
And I, what I do and how I eat, what I eat, the not stressing, if I not making a big stress factor because, oh, I ate something that wasn't good for me. Well, it's kind of hard to stay perfect in this country because there's not many places you can go that you can always get something good to eat. So you have to make sure that you don't continue the pattern, but in those circumstances you do that, then making sure you do the things to cleanse your body, to get it out of you, and to keep moving forward instead of, oh, dwelling on, oh no, I did something wrong. And no, okay, I did that, so now I have to compensate for that and keep moving forward. um, the telemedicine, just in, now you see everybody's got telemedicine, from the doctors to therapists to um, dermatology, but it's still in its infancy as far as its implementation. And the big side of that is you still have a problem with the infrastructure of this country of getting internet and the communication system up to speed to completely put it in the country, you know, nationwide, with high speed internet, because that's what it's going to take. Um, which uh, partner of mine just reminded me of back in the 90s when at the technology cluster they had me speak to a French delegation about um, video conferencing. Hmm. And I was saying video conferencing stays in its infancy until you have, one, a database that can deal with the capacity, and the internet that can deal with the speed and able to have high speed internet nationwide and then globally. Until you still have, even now in this country, you still have almost 35% of the country that still does not have high speed internet.
Exactly. We see that infrastructure still being in need, especially in rural communities. And, you know, that's part of what I was noticing in my survey of the various submarkets around the nation of Jamaica is, you know, their investments in building and adding infrastructure so that they could have more access to. technologies that require high speed internet in order for those technologies to be not only accessible but usable. But I think I still find it interesting. It's, you kind of forget about what dial up experience was like because we're so far past that in most cases in the US. When I'm in Jamaica, I think that the ATMs are still on dial up there.
Okay. And that becomes, but it's not just there. If you go and, you would think California would have high speed everywhere. You can go in parts of the Central Valley and you're still on dial-up.
I
If you
believe it.
get anywhere approximately 20 miles outside of to the east of Interstate 99, you're now looking at, it is rare that you will have dial-up. The best you'll have is DSL, but most of it's still dial-up. Um, and they have the rural telecom um, bill that passed, but again goes back to situations where you do not have the personnel um, to in place or the pipeline built to build out that infrastructure. You still need training and people to start building out. Here in Las Vegas, right now, the biggest capacity is trying to catch up with the explosion of people from California coming into the the valley, and they're still not ready for that.
And it's something that's been being discussed on the radar. And kind of in that context, what do you see going forward for CMT in terms of its role, and how you plan strategically to participate in not only these opportunities, in California, across the US, as well as in particular right here in your backyard in Vegas? What are you seeing as opportunities for your company?
Well, we're looking more at this point to shifting a big focus on one with CMT going into low voltage. Well, we had been doing low voltage all the time, but but smart homes, surveillance, but going into fiber optics installation, and to feed that system is utilizing a nonprofit for training
Hmm.
and internships for the communications infrastructure to teach, going all the way back to ninth grade, to start teaching them that ability to understand that is a viable, because you look at um, the industry outlook reports and they're talking about, you're looking at 2035 before you will even get an electrical grid that could possibly deal with the electric cars they're talking about having, let alone the communications.
Well,
So
that's what happened. They started to roll back on some of these requirements for the electrical vehicles just because of the lacking infrastructure. And a lot of times, people forget. On one hand, we're saying that we want to make these adjustments in order to deal with global warming and climate change issues, as well as being more environmentally conscious and protective, in our efforts of growth. But at the same time, it's which one comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? Uh,
exactly.
yeah.
And with that, we need to make sure that we um, put together a plan that not only, it's not for me to just build something and say, "Ooh, I built this and I can make all this money." No, it's the people behind me, my kids, my grandkids, their kids. Build that feeder system and pipeline, and it starts with the education and showing them what's out there. Um, One of the things is specializing in going um, the NACE codes, showing kids what that is. Every job in this country has a code to it. Teach them how to go look them up, and just pick a few of them to see what they do. As they say, free your mind.
Absolutely. Well, those are such timely conversations. In the U.S., they've been talking about the FAFSA program as young people right now have been trying to get their financial aid situation so that they can appropriately apply to various universities. And the system is having all kind of glitches in an effort to roll out a better solution. The application, they say it was 130 questions. They tried to reduce it to 20, but somehow or another that's created a whole system malfunction and delay. But it's kind of, that same idea is that planning for not only university, but really the importance of trades and the need and demand for having knowledge and awareness of these particular trades and opportunities that are ready and vacant and looking for qualified talent right now. You touched on the next code, and I said there's businesses that I deal with that oftentimes I have to ask them, how have you identified your business? Do you understand your code? North American Industrial Classification System
Classification system, right?
basically set up to help each company
And
understand its
thank you. I have to start saying it like that as opposed to, we've been in it for so long, so we just call it NACE codes and we know what we're talking about. But there's
sure.
so many people, businesses that don't even know what their code is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, believe it
Yes.
or not, and I appreciate you for joining me. We have come to the top of the hour. Are you accepting clients in this market that might be looking for solutions that CMT provides?
Yes.
All right, so how would one get in contact with you?
You can contact me at www.cmtintegration.com and by way of email at office at cmtintegration.com or Michael H at cmtintegration.com. And phone number, area code 510-229-7861.
All
And
right, give me the number one more time, 510.
229-7861.
Perfect. Okay, well, fantastic. Well, again, like I said, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Naked
Yep.
with Dr. Money. And I'm sure we'll be catching up and continuing our dialogue going forward.
I definitely look forward to it.
All right. Have a great rest of your
All right.
day.
You too. Take care.
Bye. Well, thank you again for joining me for this episode of Naked with Dr. Money. As I mentioned, each week we come. If it's noon and Pacific time, you know what time it is. Our conversation is going to touch on mindset, motivations, and manifestations. So until next time we're together, you go out and be great. And I'll see you soon. Take care.